I usually bring my main recording computer over here near me now, but it's still on my mixing desk.
Yeah, I'm still in the process of building mine. Mine's kind of strewn out among two tables that are in an L shape till I build my studio and bar.
And bar?
Well, it's going to be a speakeasy. It's going to be I'm going to have two little girls in this house plus my wife, so I'm going to need my own space to A, get away, B, record, and C, entertain. So might as well just make them all one and have a hidden bookcase door revealing a speakeasy that is my studio and man cave speakeasy bar.
On that note, let's officially start the Podcast Engineering Show, session 18. Here's a band in your speakeasy. Actually, I don't know if these guys are still playing. I don't think they are.
Some of my favorite bands are nowhere near still playing, but
wow. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. See, my guest is already on here. We're already having fun. We didn't even start the show yet. My name is Chris Curran. I'm a producer of podcasts. I also host podcasts, several, other than this one. And I produce shows for Forbes, Dun & Bradstreet, as well as many select business authors. And every week on this show, I bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter because I interview experts and podcast producers and engineers, and we really get the details on what their setup is and how they're making it sound good and everything like that. Of course, this show is all about the sound, the technology, the audio engineering aspect of podcasting. We don't really get into the marketing or how to get more listeners or how to choose a niche market, all that stuff. I actually have a background in audio engineering in the music business, which it's been a while since I looked at all my album credits, but I got album credits. I met famous people. It was great in the 90s. Learned how to make records, came back to Jersey and started producing bands on my own. It was great, and I entered podcasting about 4 years ago, and I realized that most, if not 99.99% of podcasters really don't have strong audio engineering skills. There's a lot of lack of fundamental knowledge, and, you know, a few episodes ago, you heard me talking to Kevin Farkas, getting all into the weeds about sample rates and all that stuff. There's really a lot to learn, and it really can help you because once you understand what you're doing, it really helps a lot. Of course, Barry is with me. Barry, let me turn up your volume. No, he's really with me, though, but I got to turn up his volume. What's up, Barry?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's not all you say, is it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right. What are we going to need for this episode, Barry, to make this a good episode with Jason Bryant?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
I don't know why Barry thinks we need horses and mules. So this show is brought to you by two organizations that I'm part of. One is the Podcast Engineering School. That's right. The fall of this year, 2016, we're going to have our first in-person Podcast Engineering School course. I'm planning it right now. It's going to be awesome. PodcastEngineeringSchool.com is the website. And that's where this show lives as well. And also Fractal Recording. That's my production company where I produce podcasts for Forbes and Dun & Bradstreet and all those business authors. FractalRecording.com. You can listen and subscribe to this show everywhere. Today, my guest is Jason Bryant. Thank God he's here. He's the founder of Matt Talk Podcast Network, and which I think is all, Jason, it's all about wrestling?
all about Olympic, college, and high school level wrestling. Yep.
Man, all right. He's the host of 10 shows out of the 14 on that network. He's the host or co-host of 10 shows. He's also a sports writer and a PA announcer. And man, I checked out one of your shows, and you got a nice audio setup, and I really can't wait to get into it. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoy the show. I remember when I discovered it through the School of Podcasting. You were on with Dave Jackson. I think I was out on a walk. I'm like, ooh, this is geek stuff. I like this stuff. This is the stuff that's starting to get in my wheelhouse as I develop my my gear and try to expand and have a true studio. So I'm really been, educating myself on these things. Although, like the last episode with Kevin Farkas, you're right. It did. I was like, whoa, what? Okay. You can record in something other than 44.1?
Right.
Wait, what? We're podcasters. You mean we can do something other than mono? No, we knew that.
Right.
Yeah, that was an episode I really enjoyed, episode 14. So that's one that I've learned something from each and every one of these episodes. So hopefully somebody out there can learn something from my bass backwards technology and figuring ways out and make it work with everybody's systems. Because everybody I've talked to and listened to on your show, and they've all got their own unique setups, which I find just fascinating.
Right? Yeah, and we're going to get into yours too, because, the proof is in the pudding here. When you listen to someone's podcast and it sounds really good, that's it. That's the goal. Goal reached. Check that box off. So, it doesn't matter how you do it, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what type of setup Barry's got, man, because he always sounds smooth, crisp, and clean. I mean, I don't know what this guy's obsession is with livestock, but hey... You know what? Glenn the Geek's got a great horse show. Maybe Barry needs to listen to that one.
There you go. Barry, you have your own studio. What's your studio like?
There's no activity, no giggle, no nothing.
Oh man, really?
Why does he sound? Now he sounds foreign. What type of effects processing, Barry, are you doing here? I'm not familiar with what level board can give you foreign and radio as an effect. Man, that's amazing. You got to have him on the show more than. Yeah, really frightening.
Hey Barry, did you see my picture on the Podcast Movement website? They actually put, because I'm speaking at Podcast Movement, or actually by the time this comes out, it's probably over. But anyway, my speaker page at the Podcast Movement. Did you look at that, Barry? What did it look like when you looked at it? My picture.
Something from out of ancient times. Big mouth. Lot of teeth.
Really? All right. Well, that's one of my favorite clips. Let's see. Big mouth.
Yeah,
it's like Caribbean.
I'm just going to let you handle that one. I'm going to stay away from that one. It's,
there you go.
It's not really my wheelhouse.
So let's get into the speed round. Give us an overview. I know you do a lot of on-site recording as well, so maybe we should do this 2 speed rounds. One, give me your in-studio overview of your workflow real quick, and then we could do your live sound overview real quick.
All right, in studio, I am running I got a MacBook Pro, probably 2014-ish. I'm recording through Adobe Audition via a FocusRite 2i2. I'll explain why I'm using that in a second. My mixing board, I'm running, first thing, the microphone. That's the thing we got to start with, right? The microphone, I'm using an AT2005, and I'm using both the XLR and the USB imports to record. So I'll explain that too. My board is a Yamaha MG102C. It's not a USB board, but from there I run out to the FocusRite, my left and right channels out of the main mix, and then the FocusRite will allow me to record multi-track into Audition. I'm also, with the phone calls, I'm using the USB portion of the AT2005 into Skype using ECamm Call recorder for recording redundancy, as I'm already recording once on Audition. I'm also going out of the board into a Zoom H5, which I use for a lot of mobile stuff, and that was the first setup. Was simply, it was first with a roll, and now it's an H5. So I went from recording one way to recording 2 to recording 3. So if something screws up, I've got it straight. Now sending through the Skype, it's that, or if I'm using a mix minus, I will use my Behringer U control, which I've got set up with a mix minus through the aux send as a second USB interface. Because sometimes if I'm like, if I want Barry on my show, I've got an opportunity for my guest to hear him. So I've got it's taken me a little ways to figure this out. I added the Focusrite back in, I want to say December, when I was on a trip to New York City and was about 2 blocks from B&H Warehouse, and they had a Black Friday deal on it. And I'm like, you know what? I've seen this thing. It's a simple little machine. It's a simple little box. It's stable. And that's basically what it is. So I'm going Yamaha MG102C. I'm going to eventually upgrade the board when I build the Speakeasy Studio that I alluded to before we started. I just bought another Focusrite 2i2 for on the road. The H5 is on the road. I've got a couple other mixers in the box that I will take. Actually, I have a small little Mackie that I will take on the road now with the Focusrite. I'll actually kind of have more of a mobile studio on the road. When I use the H5, I realize I'm combining the speed rounds here.
That's okay, yeah, so take a breath. But, when you go mobile, you got the H5, and what else? So the H5 on the road is your main recorder.
That is correct. I've also got the add-on attachment to add the 2 XLRs, so I can have as many as 4, and I have a collection of microphones. Last time I did inventory, I think I have 14 microphones, and some of them are old. Some of them, I got a couple Audio-Technica headsets that I used as when I was broadcasting at USA Wrestling when I was living in Colorado Springs, And then I have probably 5 or 6 AT2005s and ATR 2100s. I usually, when I see them drop under $50, I usually buy 1 or 2 because at their price point, they're definitely, I mean, it's all right, that one's broke, toss it.
Right.
And they hold up pretty good. I think I only have had one of those like 6 ATR 2100s go bad, and that was because it got tossed into the middle of a wrestling mat during a tournament. That's another story entirely. But
wow.
I've been using the 2005 as my main desk unit. I've got a boom arm with it. I think it's one of the newer ones. I think that's the brand name. It's kind of squeaky sometimes, so I don't move it much, but I like to keep it simple with those. The bundle that comes with the AT 2005 and the ATR 2001 with that little plastic mic stand works great when you're mobile. So I don't have to bring a huge set. I mean, we did a couple podcasts last year from Fargo, North Dakota at our junior nationals where we're at Buffalo Wild Wings. So I use that. I use those. I had another microphone set up so people would walk by our table and just jump in. I've also got a pair of, actually it's not a pair, it's a pair of lav mics on one microphone interface that plugs into an 1/8 inch from Giant Squid Audio. I heard Dave Jackson bring that up for a couple things. So I went and bought one. I've used that for a couple interviews as well. So I kind of have a hybrid of whatever works for my environment is what I'll use. And I also have a Roland RO5 that I used. If I need just a quick interview, I've got a XLR to 1/8 stereo input that I will use for interviews if I'm on the fly. I usually kind of keep that in my bag at all times.
I see. The Roland RO5, yeah, it's a little handheld digital recorder. You can just pull out a mic and do a little interview if you need to. That's cool. So the Zoom H5, by the way, is one of my friend Mike Helms. He has a Zoom H5. He loves it. He absolutely raves about it. He does video production as well. He has a podcast called the Up to You podcast. But that's cool because you have the attachment. You can have 4 mics going into the Zoom H5 when you're on location. And so when you're on location, let's just get into this a little bit. So you're recording all 4 mics just direct, and you're just making sure the level's good. And then that's all you're doing on site. Then when you get home, you sort of go through it all, right? Right.
And it's not even home. 90% of the time, I'm doing it that day. I'll throw the card in. I'll bring the tracks in. Do a little bit. I'm not. This is where I'm starting to listen to your show a lot more about this, the noise correction and things. I do use some of the simple stuff in Audition when I have to, take out some of the background noise. Some of it's just simply it's the simple capture the noise print and just use that little effect.
Right.
And that takes out a lot of it. So I don't have to just kill myself learning every little nuance of audio engineering. It's just that little task right there has saved me a lot of time. And sometimes when I'm in an environment that I'm not really sure how long this is going to take me, or I have a lot of bleed through the second mic, or there's a lot of background noise. A couple weeks ago, I was down in Stillwater, Oklahoma, recording inside of a country club. So there was a golf tournament going on, and there was one of the folks I was interviewing for a Hall of Fame show. And there was just people chattering, playing poker in the background and having lunch. And I ran those 2 tracks through Auphonics multi-track app for my MacBook, and it took it down to the point where I couldn't have corrected that very well in Audition because my learning curve is I'm still getting there. And I've been using Audition for about 2 years, but it's a pretty robust program for those who are just jumping into it. I think I started with GarageBand back in 2010, and that was actually my second show. My first show, I didn't even really edit it. It was just recording Nicecast and all right, upload.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. But when I take the tracks out and just throw them in there, line them up and go.
Right? So when you uploaded your tracks into Auphonic, and there's that it's the Auphonic multi-track program, right? For your
right.
Yeah. And then there's a checkbox called Crosstalk. Did you check that one?
Absolutely. Yeah,
so that actually so for the listeners, what that does is it tells Auphonic that, hey, these are 2 separate microphone tracks that are recorded in the same loud room. So when one is talking and the other is not talking, I think Auphonic might even just mute the other one or really take it down to almost nothing. And it knows that both those mics are in the same loud room, and then it processes it that way. That's pretty cool.
Multi-track processor has been something that has been a nice little addition. I don't use it very often, but to have it there and using it, and I've used the regular desktop Auphonic for certain things. If I know I'm in a situation, it's like, you know what, it's on one track. Typically I record multi-track even with the H5, but it's something that having it there gives me a little bit of wiggle room. And I haven't had to use it much, but when I've used it, it's really amped up the product quite noticeably.
Right, and the noise reduction you were talking about when you do the what is it? Oh yeah, the noise print capture, whatever that is. What is that in Audition?
Yeah, that's an Audition. So what I'll do is I'll have a multi-track session. I'll open it up and I'll find a gap in my track, and what I do is I open up the heat map, the spectral frequency display, which if you're looking at it on there, you've got the waveform, but up there's waveform, multi-track, and then there's this thing that looks like a heat map, and I hit that. And that shows me, and I can't remember, I think it was Kyron Mountain of Mountain Media. He does some podcast production. He showed me this little trick to look at it. And I'm like, oh, I can see where there's that fuzz, if you will. And I'll take a blank section of that, and I'll go to the effects. And right down in the drop down in the effects, there's noise reduction and restoration. I'll capture the noise print. I'll save it, and then I'll hit noise reduction, and and you got to select the whole file, and it takes out just kind of what's in there. So it's low enough where it doesn't take anything really noticeable out of the waveform where I'm talking, and it just, sometimes you're on a Skype call or you're on a cell phone call. Not everybody's going to be able to use a Skype to Skype or like we're using here, TriCast or Zencastr or something like that, or Ringer. I haven't used Ringer yet, but it brings it down. So sometimes you can clear up what's a kind of a fuzzy call and make it really clear. So that's just a simple effect, and I always use the defaults in Audition. So it's under that effects. So noise reduction, restoration, I do that with each track. I ran a test last week on running, okay, do I do this or do I run it through Auphonic first and not do it? And if I'm recording straight into Audition, I'll just do it right there, because Auphonic is another step. It's a step if I need something really cleaned up, I'll run it through there. Before I do anything, but since I've already got it in my timeline or in Audition, I don't need to take those files back out, put them back in, and bring them back in, because I'll look at my levels, adjust my loudness settings with the match loudness feature within Audition, and keep it to about anywhere from 18 to 16 negative LUFS, whatever you want to call them, and usually it sounds pretty slick.
Yeah, that's cool. The noise reduction. I use the same thing in SoundForge Pro when I mix everything down to stereo and I'm doing my final stereo editing and my mastering. That's what I do in SoundForge Pro. And yeah, same thing. There's a noise reduction plugin, and I do the same thing. Look for a little space where there's pretty much nothing and take a noise print and then apply it to the whole track. And yeah, basically it's just getting rid of like white noise type sound, which is really low in the background.
Yeah, not to be confused with Anthrax's Sound of White Noise, which is quite a good album.
Which was it was good. It's okay.
See, I'm not a Joey Belladonna Anthrax guy as much as I am a John Bush Anthrax guy. So I like it's like I like more the throaty sound versus the hairband. I like more the duh duh versus the So I saw Anthrax live back in '98 with. With Pantera. So, it's like, all right, I like the John Bush sound, even though that as a metal purist might cringe at that thought, but I really did like that. No,
I mean, everyone has their own taste. I'm probably a little older than you, so I'm back in the late 80s is when I was in high school. So it was Metallica, Anthrax, and Slayer, and everybody, and that's when Among the Living came out. And I actually, my first show was Anthrax in 1987. And it was on the Among the Living tour, and words do not
I don't have that
describe.
kind of a cool first show story. My first concert was REM when Grantley Buffalo opened up. It was such a disappointment.
Oh!
It was such a disappointment. Some people just don't sound good live, and REM was one of those bands that I was just like, I wasted $27 on this, which at the time, you think of it now, $27, that's a cheap ticket. That was like an expensive ticket back at the Hampton Coliseum back in 1996, I think it was.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so we got off on white noise, and that's what we were talking about, noise reduction. So noise reduction can be very handy. When I use it a lot is on phone calls, like because I have a broadband digital hybrid box, so I can take phone calls that go right into my mixing board, and I can record it on its own track. So after recording, I go through to the track that has the phone call recorded on it, and phone calls have a lot of noise, so it really helps clean up a phone call. That shh in the background just gets lower. You can't get rid of it, but you can bring it like 25 or 27 dB lower, and it really makes a big difference. That's where I find the biggest difference with noise reduction.
Yeah, and we're one of these people that don't have a home phone these days. So I looked at a hybrid box at one point, and then I was like, well, I just got a Skype in number. So I actually pay Skype to have a phone number. So on the ends of my emails, I've got I call it my Skype studio line or studio call-in line or something like that, because it's got a number to it. It rings right to my computer. Matter of fact, I use that for most of my office calls because my cell reception in my office basement right now, and I live in Minnesota, so I'm not like in a basement in a dungeon type of thing. I mean, it's a walkout basement. I've got windows in here,
nice.
But it's I use that for the phone. So a lot of these people that I'm interviewing, not all of them have Skype to Skype. I've done a couple of them with Zencaster just to test it out, and it's not like it was a high enough profile show that okay, if I have to redo it, it's not a huge deal. But I take that. That's why I like recording in multi-track, because I can take that side of the call, and if it's fuzzy, run that noise print and that noise reduction in there, and it cleans it up pretty good.
Yeah, big difference between the digital hybrid, taking a phone call through the digital hybrid, and taking a phone call on Skype is that on Skype they cut out some of the high frequencies. I think maybe even above, like, I don't even know, 8 or 10K. It sounds like they just cut it off, like it's just gone. That might not be true, but it just sounds the very high end on a Skype phone call is it's really rolled off somehow. And on the digital hybrid phone, it's literally just like a phone. And actually, that's where most of the white noise is. It's in the higher frequencies, so that's why Skype rolls it off. But at the same time, you're losing some of that intelligibility, the presence, of the voice. So that's a big difference. But Skype does very well with phone calls. In fact, one of the good things about Skype on phone calls especially is that it does some sort of, compressing and limiting, and it levels it pretty good. So I think I talked about this a few shows ago, that when you're on Skype, you can find out where the highest point that the wave is going to reach, and you can set your level that way, because Skype is going to act as a hard limiter. It's not going to go above that, which is kind of cool. So you can set your level, and you can, breathe easy knowing that, oh man, there's baby deer right in my backyard right now.
Yeah, and it's illegal to. Never mind, I won't bring that up.
My God.
My experience is Colorado Springs. I got raccoons and squirrels digging up my yard, so I have a different reaction when I see wildlife outside my window here.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we live in Colorado Springs, so like we see deer and bobcat and coyote. We love it. We really like nature. We're not hunters or fishers or anything. We don't want to kill anything. We just want to enjoy it. In fact, this past weekend we went up to Estes Park. We saw moose. We saw bighorn sheep for the first time ever. Pretty close, too.
Yeah, we went up there for an anniversary, and we were leaving to go down to go on a horseback ride for a couple hours, and we were trying to get out of the parking lot of this little resort we were staying in, more or less a cabin that called itself a resort, and there's just a herd of elk just sitting there going, "Hey, sorry, dude, we're standing here." I'm like, we had to wait about 5 minutes for those guys to clear the road.
Oh, that's funny.
Those are big animals, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, the elks are huge. Moose are even bigger. But it's just great. The wildlife's great. Anyway, I digress. But I'm in my basement, my walkout basement with windows. That's where my studio is too. And right behind us is this nice hill, and the deer haven't been around for like the last month or 6 weeks, and we know it's because the females are having their babies. So this is the first time I've seen one of the babies, but it wasn't even that small. It was pretty big already. Maybe it wasn't a baby. And it had to be, though. Anyway, so back to, I was talking about Skype and the leveling on Skype, which is good. Skype kind of makes it easy. But Skype, one of these days, well, Cast is doing a good job and Zencaster's doing a good job. One of these days, well, Skype is easy because everyone has it. That's why everyone uses it. But Skype, as far as audio quality, is not that great at all. Not even just VoIP, usually. Some VoIP connections are not good. Some are fine, but some are like almost nasty.
Yeah, I haven't gotten one that's unusable, but I think I found it a couple. I was listening to one of these. There's a couple podcast groups out there that have things. I know there was one. Mike Murphy hosts one on Blab every Monday night, and I ask a new podcast or anything, and he gets people to come in there, and we're all just kind of shooting the breeze on things. And I discovered that the newer versions of Skype actually have added that limiting into it. I'm on version 7.26, and that's one that hasn't been affected by the limits. So I'm not going to upgrade any further than that unless they force me to. But Zencaster, I'm pretty happy with that. Even if I have to use the the MP3 file, sometimes I've noticed that it's all dependent on your internet connection, and it's trying to sync to Dropbox with a wave that can cause a little bit of lag with the files. But I'm 2 for 2 on Zencaster. The Skype audio, and you were talking about the highs on there. I went and looked at the spectral analysis,
nice.
Or as I just call it, the heat map of the last show I did through Skype to a phone. And you're right, it's not really getting anything above 4K. So everything from like 5 to 10 is just pretty much blank. What I'll do though is sometimes when I see it peak way above there and it creates that crackle, I'll actually go into that heat map, find where it goes above 10K. Grab it through the entire file and just delete that part of the wave, and it actually really smooths it out pretty well too.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you ever get that crackling and you're trying to like prevent it from peaking, that's one quick way to do it. I've found is grab the entire file above a certain part on the heat map side of things and just delete that top end of the waveform, and it kind of mellows it out pretty good.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never used that function in Audition. I think I have to get Audition. Almost every guest on the show uses Audition, and I've literally never used it.
I was actually more amazed on how many people in some of the early shows were still using GarageBand.
Right.
Because when I started the second podcast I did back in 2010, I was using a Skype setup through GarageBand. I was curious, and then once I moved, I have the Creative Cloud because I did a lot of magazine publishing, and I was like, well, I've got Audition, I might as well use it.
Right.
So that's when the learning curve came into there, and I've been using it for probably for 2.5 years at this point.
Nice. So, by the way, I didn't mention that I'm actually using a new microphone on this show. This is the first show, the first podcast engineering show. I'm using my new RE20. I decided to splurge.
Ooh, you splurged, yeah.
And I went and I tested a RE320 versus a RE20, and I chose the RE20. It's quite a bit more expensive, but it sounded less processed. Believe it or not, the difference between the RE20 and the RE320 is the internal circuitry in the microphone. I mean, every microphone has internal circuitry, right? They have to turn the differences in air pressure that's coming into the mic. They have to turn that into an electrical signal. There's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of different nuances you can use or not use. So, and that's what makes a mic sound what it sounds like. That's what gives each mic its own sound. And I felt like with the RE320 that they just what they did to it within the mic, they added some nice presence. It sounds really good. It's very smooth. I like it, but the RE20 was just a little more pure, like unprocessed, a little more unprocessed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I've been looking at those too as well, and I know Daniel J. Lewis at the Audacity podcast had a nice little breakdown of the different microphones. He likes the RE320. I like its price point, and I'm not going to upgrade to that level of microphone until my equipment eventually gets upgraded when I build the studio officially. So I've got some ideas. So if in 2 years when I finally get this thing built, because it's going to be we've got another child on the way, and the resources with the funds just tend to get diverted.
Yeah.
When there's actually real life involving things. So eventually, I like this little Yamaha board. It's been great, but I want to eventually expand. I think the one I've got my eye on right now through various podcasting groups on Facebook, and Jason DeFilippo hosts Grumpy Old Geeks, and he does production for The Art of Charm, and we were having a conversation in the podcast gear group, and I was like, looking to go in one direction, and they were talking PreSonus Studio 192, and I'm looking at it, I was like, ooh, it's rack mounted. I'm still kind of hesitant on maybe using software as a point, but everything I'm reading about this thing is it's probably at the top of my want list when I move to a mixer, and or maybe just an interface and have a digital mixing environment, and maybe even throw in a Mac Mini as a Skype machine. So I'm still looking at what I'm going to do there. Maybe when we revisit this in a while to see what my setup is in a year or so from now. Hopefully I'm in where I want to be with my speakeasy with the boom mics on each side of the bar. So it's like you come to the bar and have a conversation. That's eventually what I want to get to.
That's cool. Like in front of every bar stool, there could be You could even like make it like a fake beer tap, but then just put a little mic on it, so people think.
I like where your head's at there.
People are just talking; they won't even notice there's a mic.
Yeah, but there's actually going to be beer on this thing too. I don't know about the taps because I don't think you can be a heavy podcaster and a beer master at the same time, because I don't want to clean taps, man. I just got a nice fridge with some very good flavors of adult beverage in there that I rotate throughout the year. And when you come into the studio, eventually when it's done, it's like, all right, here's on the board, here's your choices, and let's crack one and go.
There you go. So let's talk about the in-studio, what you're doing right now. We talked about it a little. You kind of went over it. But the mic you're using is an AT2005. And my question is, it's very similar to the AT2100, which is one of the most popular podcasting microphones. What's the difference between the 2005 and the 2100?
When I was researching them, it was one of those things where everybody's saying, the guts are the same. And when I saw them drop on Amazon to a price point below the ATR 2100, I was like, all right, I'll give you a shot. I bought two of them, and ultimately I use these mics for various purposes. You had mentioned that I do a lot of PA announcing. Well, I actually use the AT 2005 as a PA announcer for various events, and found that the sound from a PA standpoint works very well with arena sound systems. I've actually also have a Shure Classic 55, which is that it's almost the cliche podcasting microphone you see in show artwork, but I actually have one. I actually use one. So, in my short time wrestling podcast, I've got headphones and a microphone. Well, the show is sponsored by a headphone company, and I actually use the Classic 55. So I'm not just putting out that big old school microphone as show art. I actually use it. But the AT2005, I found I liked the flattened switch on it when I'm traveling, because it doesn't catch on things. It seems a little, it's flatter, it's wider, and you get a real, when your thumb hits it, it's going to go up. Whereas the 2100, it's just a little bit more of a switch. And as much as I've used these things, I've used so many microphones over the last 20-something years doing announcing that I've snapped off switches before. Just because I think it's a little bit more of an insurance thing, and I think they travel better. I like the flat head of the windscreen there, and the color black versus silver means nothing to me. I just found it to sound similar. It travels well, and at that price point, if they break, it's not going to break the bank if I need to get a replacement. So when I see them drop on sale below $50, regardless if it's a 2100 or the 2005, I'll probably pick one or two up just to have them.
Right. So now we're going to go through the 3 ways that you record when you record live.
Yes, triple redundancy. And people are going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Well,
I do it too. I'm recording in 3 places right now. Not as redundant as you, because, all right, so let me see if I understand what you're doing. You have your board, which is a Yamaha MG102C, and I only know that because you sent me some notes beforehand, so thank you for that. You have your board, and your mic's obviously going into your board, and coming out of the board, you're going into another computer, or a computer which is running Audition, and you're recording into Audition. That's one recording, right?
Right, through the FocusRite 2i2. So I've got my left channel going in channel 1, my right channel going in channel 2. So I've got my audio panned left. In this case, if I were recording this show for my show, your audio would be in another channel panned all the way right. So then I've got them on a multi-track file within Audition. So that's the primary way I edit. That's the main file I'm going to use.
Got it.
If something happens with that, if the FocusRite goes out, or if my mixer decides to blow up, or if something something happens wrong with that chain, I've got Skype recording through with ECamm Call recorder, and I'm using the USB of that instead of the XLR through the board. So if the board goes out, I'm recording the USB audio through ECamm Call recorder.
So you have 2 different computers then. One running Audition recording and another computer running Skype and ECamm.
No, it's the same machine.
It's the same machine. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on a Skypeosaurus as yet.
Okay.
So I've got on the same machine, I'm using the call. So as of right now, say if this was a Skype call, I'd have ECamm running and I'd be talking through the computer, routing the sound through into the mixer and in that respect. So Skype's picking up the 2005, my audio. It's not picking up the XLR through the board.
Right.
So there I've got 2 separate, the same microphone filling two different audio recordings, basically segments. So,
right.
And the third is the H5, which is the mix straight out of the board.
Right. So the H5 is the third. So my question is, your microphone, because we have to make it clear for all the listeners, your microphone is an XLR mic and a USB mic. It's both. And actually, you can use it as both simultaneously. So that's what you're doing. The XLR is going to your mixing board, and the USB is going directly to the computer.
Correct.
And now so the person on Skype is hearing the USB connection from your microphone. Now, the person on Skype, their audio is coming out of the computer and going into the board?
Yes, it is.
And then it's going through the board back into the computer, right?
Right.
So how does Audition... Well, Audition's just taken left and right from the Scarlett. That's
right,
fine.
because what's coming into the board from my computer audio, the Skype, is panned all the way to the right. So that's channel 2. I'm in channel 1.
So now, how do you not feed back through the computer? So you're going through the board, you're going into the computer. Usually a computer, when you're recording, it'll be on like input, as we used to say, where it'll come... Your mic would come through the output as well. How do you stop that from
this
happening?
respect, I'm not, because I do have a mix minus running with a U control, but I'm not 100% keen on. I set it up one way and it worked, and that was like 2 years ago. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Sure.
So as I'm eyeballing it right here, because Audition's only reading my left channel through FocusRite, so the listener, my audio is not coming back through the second channel. So I am.
Well, here's my question.
Yeah.
Another question. To get the Skype caller out of the computer into the board, where are you coming out of the computer? Are you coming out of the Scarlett or just out of like the headphone jack or something?
I'm running out of the headphone out into in this case channel 4 on my board.
Actually, then that explains it, because that helps explain it, because Audition is only seeing the Scarlett.
That is correct.
Right. So the Audition's not getting involved with in and out and all that. It's just literally recording Scarlett, and that's fine. And somehow your mic going in USB and the Skype caller coming out of the headphone, that's a separate connection, if you will, in and out. Right.
That, and I also use headphones for everything. So
right.
Little tip, folks, record with headphones.
Yeah. How many people do we connect with who... They're just screaming into a laptop with no headphones, and it's like,
it's
really?
like when you called a radio station back in the day, and there was that delay, and you'd hear like, turn off your radio.
Exactly. I actually made a video. See, here's a little short story. I made a video because I was concerned, and I wanted people to know how to have good audio when you're just a guest on a show. I mean, forget being a podcaster. Just like when you're going to be interviewed or when you're going to talk to somebody that's being recorded. I mean, there's a way to do it that's sloppy and sounds horrific, and then there's ways to do it where you'll sound fine. You'll sound really good. So I made a little video, but the problem is my little video ended up being like 11 minutes, which isn't that long. And I kind of gave examples of crappy sounding audio, and I actually did different setups right in the video, and I showed it all, and I thought it was pretty good. And and I started off the video really cool. I was like, I started off the video with like the worst lighting and the worst audio sound for like the first 20 seconds or something. It was like horrible. I made it sound and look horrible on purpose. But you could still hear me. And I was like, all right, I'm here, I'm talking. How do you like the way this sounds? Sounds great, right? And then after like 20 seconds, I like literally flipped a bunch of switches and I cut the video later. So it just immediately turned to like great sound and great lighting. And I'm like, but isn't this a lot better? Isn't this how you want to come across? Anyway, all my friends told me this video, it has to be a minute and a half, Chris. This can't be 11 minutes. And I'm like, minute and a half? How am I supposed to do anything in a minute and a half? And then I was like, it took me 6 hours in my studio to make this video. I'm like, I'm not going to redo it. And then I didn't even post it publicly because I'm like, you know what? If no one's going to complain, if everyone's going to complain, then forget it.
I watch a lot of my YouTube videos now that I hit that little gear and I go to 1.5. So, okay, yeah, you're 11 minutes. It's taking me 5:50.
Interesting.
Well, that's 2 times speed. So maybe 8 minutes. So Yeah, if sometimes you go down that YouTube rabbit hole and you're like watching Watch Mojo top 10 list or something.
Yeah.
It's like, the top 10 saddest movie deaths of all time or something like that. You're like, all right, I'm going to 1.5 because you're watching one and you're not going to be done. You look down at the clock and be like, it's 2 a.m. I got to stop watching these things.
Right.
That's when I stop. It's not because of the speed. So,
all right, you got triple redundancy going here, and the Zoom H5 that's the third one. That's just taking stereo, left and right off the board right into the H5. Now, your Adobe Audition is your main one. So the other two, the ECamm Call recording, and the H5, you basically don't touch them. Do you kind of archive them, or do you hang on to them for a bit?
Well, when I was in Oklahoma last weekend, or at the time this comes out, so beginning of June, I had a situation where I was recording on Audition, and I actually had a bit of the timeline highlighted, and I recorded, and it stopped, and I'm like in the middle of the interview, and I'm like, okay, I hit record. So that's where I had redundancy on the on-site interview, because I'd done this a little differently. I actually brought the FocusRite down, and I was recording into Audition there, but I was like, I had to go back to the H5, pull that part of the segment. It was maybe 30 seconds, insert that back into the timeline. There have been cases where something would go wrong, and it's only been one case where it's went wrong, and I had... actually, I know exactly what it was. I was interviewing an artist up here in Minnesota. He was an artist, but he was a wrestling coach. So there was a tie-in to my show. And I have my H5, and this is before I was actually using Audition fully. I would edit with Audition, but I didn't start recording with Audition until about a year ago. So I had my H5 on the desk, and I usually have it plugged into the USB power supply. Well, I didn't have it plugged in, and the batteries went dead.
Oh.
And I looked over and I'm like, why is it dark? And I hit it and record. And I just, I didn't say, hold on, stop, we got to do something here. I just let it roll because I had call recorders. So that entire show, the first 20 minutes of it I got, and then the next 30, 35, they would have been dead if I hadn't been paying attention. But call recorders saved me in that respect. So I would have had to do what was a great interview over again, or you'd lose it. And ECamm saved me that way. So I just pulled that in, used the movie tools that come with it, split the sides. I actually converted it, I think, to an AIFF because it's a little cleaner on a Mac in that respect. If I have to pull the MOV and split it and create I don't want to create an MP3. I found the AIFF with Audition works a little bit better coming out of call recorder if you have to use that. But I've had it happen one time, and that one time has been so worth it. So after I post a show, and I've got the WAV file, I'll archive the WAV file from Audition over, and I'll just go to that saved calls file in ECamm Call Recorder and just delete them. Once they've been posted and I have an archive of them on an external hard drive, I don't need to keep that raw MOV file because a lot of these new Macs don't have the hard drive space that they're coming with. I think this one had maybe 512 gigs, which is, we think back in the day, I mean, my laptop was 1.3 gigs, and that was massive at the time. That thing, I mean, I've got flash drives that hold 10 times more than that now.
Easily. 1,000 times more.
Yeah, so the call recorder saved me on that episode. I didn't have to, it didn't affect my workflow. I just, converted the files, threw them into the timeline, and went with it. So having that redundancy has definitely saved me from that embarrassment when some of us have done this a lot more than not have had that, oh man, I lost the show.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, recently I was recording an episode, and I thought everybody was going to come through Cast on one computer. And, of course, Cast is the 4 people can connect, and it records everyone locally without them really knowing it, just like Zencaster does. And at the last minute, the guy couldn't get Cast to work on his machine. I don't know. That happens every now and then. Someone tries to connect to Cast on Chrome, because you have to connect in Chrome, and it just won't work. You won't be able to hear him. So we ended up having to go to Skype, and so I brought him up on a different computer because I have, 5 computers here. And I brought him up on Skype on another computer, and in my multi-track recording software, which I use Reaper, I forgot to enable that track on that computer, to record that computer. So it was like a minute, thank God, it was like a minute and a half into the show. I looked at Reaper, and the guy was talking, and I'm not seeing it anywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not recording his track. So in Reaper, I immediately just hit record on his track, and it started recording. But for a minute and a half, I had to grab it from my little handheld digital recorder. So you use a Zoom H5, I use a Sony M10. So right, for that minute and a half, thank God I had the M10 rolling, because I had to it wasn't recording anywhere else. So I had to get it from there. And actually, I didn't edit that down yet, so I didn't make those edits yet, but I know I have to.
Yeah,
Crazy.
it's been that was one thing, and that's kind of what prompted me to start recording in Audition directly. I was worried about my computer processing and all that stuff, and I haven't had an issue with it. Once I got the buffer size and all that stuff figured out, I haven't had an issue with it. But that was one thing. It's like, well, if I'm recording, I'm using this into my timeline. Why am I not recording into Audition directly? So that's where, when I added the Focusrite to it, that's when I really started doing it, because I wanted the multi-track function. So
Right.
It really works well.
Yeah, and when let's see, when you have your new studio, are you going to ever want to record more than 2 voices on different
Oh yeah,
tracks?
absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm looking at having at least 2 or 3 microphones in studio, a Skype specific machine, maybe a Mac Mini. My daughter's basically commandeered my iPad since the moment we got it.
It's not yours anymore.
Yeah. That is for watching Paw Patrol and Bubble Guppies and YouTube videos. That for some reason, when she hits, I'll see tweets every now and then. I told my wife, I'm like, you have to log me out of my account before you watch videos on this thing. So I'll see, like,
she keeps hitting the big share button and it's tweeting on your account.
I'll be looking at my tweet deck. I'll be downstairs and my daughter will be upstairs. I'll be like, I'll see a tweet. Jason Bryant tweets, watching
Bubble Guppies,
Choo Choo Kids video, ABC, Wheels on the Bus. I'm like, right click,
classic.
delete tweet, Abby. It's like one of those.
Yeah, that is funny. So I use so you have the Focusrite 2i2, which I actually have 3 of them, I think.
Yeah, I just bought a second one this week because after that Oklahoma trip, I'm like, hey, I think I can take this on the road with me and do that redundancy on the road.
Yeah. So I also have, for my main computer, I have a Focusrite 18i20, and this thing has 8 XLR inputs. So, and of course, you can use 1/4 inch if you want as well, but it also has 8 or 10 more 1/4 inch inputs. So you can input like 18 things, but I use it for basically the 8 inputs, the 8 XLR inputs. So I come off my board, I can record 8 different tracks at the same time. And what I do is tracks 1 and 2 are always for the music, for the theme music for whatever show it is. And tracks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, tracks 3 through 8 are all for different voices. So I can have, one computer will be cast, another might be Skype, another person on the phone, and if I had 1 or 2 people in person, I can record that. I could still record literally everyone on their own track, which, I don't know, you probably never have that many people on a podcast. Although I am going to interview someone who has literally, in person, 10 to 16 people on shows at the same time.
That's ridiculous. Most I have is 5, and that's where it gets troublesome, because I'll have one show that I host is me on one side, and I have 3 guests on the other Skype channel, and it's like, and they're and they're all on cell phones, and it's like, yeah, editing that track, that's a little bit more than noise print. That's where I'm looking at, okay, I'm talking, I look at my waveform, and I see a bunch of like 2 weeks ago, we had one guy who was like working in his shed as he wasn't talking, so I had to go through the timeline, and I'm just deleting out anything that was not me talking.
Wow.
Other than maybe a laugh or a chuckle. It's like, and I'm just like, okay, you've just added an hour to my editing. Well, maybe not an hour, but I can get my from start to finish, I can probably get a show out from the moment I press record to the end of the interview. So usually within 20, 25 minutes of that interview being done, I can have the show posted and up on the web.
Oh, that is good. Yeah, so that's
donuts,
good.
Man, donuts.
I know. Well, you have your presets, you have your noise reduction, you have your tools in your toolbox, so you just bang it out. And that's good. That I was going to ask you about your editing philosophy. I mean, so I guess you don't literally go through with a fine-tooth comb and take out every and and tighten up every blank space and all that.
It depends on the guest. In one case, I had a kid from Penn State who said like every other word. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to make sure this guy doesn't look like a complete idiot.
Right.
I'll go through and I cleaned it up. And you leave some of them in there.
Or people would turn it off. That's the thing.
Yeah, and it was a good conversation. The guy had great stuff. It's just he obviously hadn't done a whole lot of interviews. So I went through and I took out the problematic ones, and then there's some gaps where it's like so then I was going to, and there's those gaps that I will take out if it's if it adds nothing to it. I don't want to take away context, or if somebody gives you a pause when they're thinking about something, I'm going to leave that space in there. There was one instance where I had I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Netflix documentary and the Foxcatcher movie that came out with Dave Schultz, who was the murdered Olympic champion. Well, I had his son on the show, and there were points where I asked him, I was like, "What does this date mean to you?" And he said, I don't know. Well, that was the day the guy who killed his father died, and it added the effect that it didn't have that impact like I thought it would, but it had another type of impact. I'm like, ooh, the pause, the and the I don't know. I'm not going to edit that type of pause out, because that just adds so much more context to it. So if it's really bad, that's when I'll take a note. And there's some things during audition. If there's a cough or a hack, I'll hit the M button and mark. Sometimes I will have to start a question over, kind of, edit point, throw those things out there. I don't say that, but I'll make a note and be like, hold on, guys, I got to start that question over again. And then I'll hit another marker, and then we'll go. So I'm aware of my issues and crutches as we're going through. Most of it's on my end, because I don't want to be like a bumbling host half the time.
Right. Hey, do you still coach wrestling, or do you coach wrestling?
No, I never coached wrestling. I competed as an athlete in high school. I was quite terrible. I was around the wrestling program where I went to college at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. I've been involved in the media aspect of it. I've been a journalist since I was 15. I'd worked at a newspaper for 8 years, worked for various wrestling associations. The National Wrestling Coaches Association, I was their director of media relations for 3 years. USA Wrestling right there in Colorado Springs, which those of you are familiar with the Olympic movement, this being an Olympic year, USA Wrestling is the organization that puts together the Olympic team in those styles. They're the governing body, just like there's USA Basketball, there's USA Hockey, there's USA Volleyball, there's basically USA whatever, gymnastics. That's the Olympic movement. So I worked there, in media relations and marketing, and had a podcast there. So my actual ability in terms of teaching wrestling probably sucks. I know I'm a lot better. I know a lot better more about technique now than I did when I was an athlete, but I've just pretty much hung on this media thing, and that's what I've been doing the last 20 years.
That's awesome. And I was asking because I think it would be cool. Like, you know how like in football on some of the NFL films, you see that they like have a microphone in different people's helmets and you can actually hear them. That'd be cool if like you had like a body mic on the wrestling coach or something, and they're like, giving the pep talks, and that'd be pretty cool.
We do see that with some of the there's a website within the space, Flow Wrestling. They do a really good job of doing that type of stuff with some of their documentaries and things. It's not necessarily something I've got an angle on with any of my shows on how I could entertain that fact. It would almost be like a one-off if I were to do something like that. I don't think I could do that. And plus, I've had very little success with wireless microphones when it comes to, clip-ons and lavs and things like that. So, and it's a little bit out of the price point. I don't need to probably spend that money on something I might use once a year. So yeah, it's something I've thought about, but it's not something that makes financial sense.
What, did you have problems with wireless, or you just didn't want to really get into it?
I had a problem with getting low-level wireless because that's what I could afford, and that... Got it. Yeah, anytime you see the word Nady, run away. Oh, jeez. Oh, my guess. Sorry if you're if anybody from Nady's listening to the show.
I was going to say my guest next week is from Nady.
Work on that lavalier portable mic set that's supposed to work and it provides nothing but feedback. Yeah, that kind of soured me on it. And thankfully, the Guitar Center in Colorado Springs actually took it back, because normally if there's a microphone and you use it, they will not take it back because of the hygiene thing with the spit. But I brought this thing back within an hour, and they're like, oh, well, it's only been an hour. We can let this slide.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Called out Nady on that. Sorry, guys.
That's
I'm
okay.
sure some of your products are good, but you know what? This particular one, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, this is what happens. Every product malfunctions at some point. It's fine. But yeah, inexpensive wireless gear is, dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, you getting all that stuff.
If you're going to do it, just do it right. I mean, I have like this little earpiece microphone, which I used to use when I was speaking on stage. It's a wireless. It's pretty cool. I don't like the fact that it's an Omni mic, because it kind of picks up everything. And I mean, it's close to my mouth, so it picks me up the most. But you really can hear the room, and like which sometimes isn't bad, but sometimes you do want it to be closer mic. But I mean, more isolated. But yeah, this mic was like, it was an AKG wireless, and it was like $600, I think, and it worked. And it sounded pretty good. The only thing is, if I got loud or if I yelled or anything, it would totally distort. And I'm like, how, that's not good. Because sometimes in a talk, you want to, you want to make a point. Yes, you want to do something, and you don't want the mic to go, yes. It's like, oh, that hurt.
Or give you that Skype,
or just the total digital distortion. That's hard.
Yeah,
to make
you don't want it sounding like Tom Morello's guitar. That's one thing you don't want.
I need some sound clips of the different types of distortion. That would be cool for this show. I'll have to figure out how to do that. Barry, you think we should do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he sounds distinctly North American now.
Really? Yeah. Barry, I mean, time's running out. We have to go. But are you okay with finishing up the show now?
No way. You crazy?
Yeah, he doesn't want to finish, Jason. He wants to hang out. Barry's cool.
Yeah, I mean, what else has he got to do? Tend to livestock. I mean, come on. I mean, he wants to listen to this. He doesn't want to necessarily talk about his horses and his mules all the time.
Right? Barry, what do you think about this transition to the end of the show?
It's a mess.
Oh, it's because we're making fun of you, Barry. Don't even try to. Yeah, if it were anybody else, we weren't talking about your livestock. You'd be like, yeah, oh yeah. I guarantee you would be.
It's a mess. So I forgot to ask you about your websites. What's the main website for the network?
Everything can be found at matttalkonline.com. That is kind of the network landing page, and there you will find 17 shows, 3 of which are archived. So that's where all the shows are, matttalkonline.com. And the Short Time Show
by the way, you should wrestle the host of that show. That'd be cool.
No, they're actually wrestling coaches. They actually know what the heck they're doing technically.
So you'd get destroyed. So don't do that.
Yeah. Some of these hosts I think I could take, but that's hope they don't hear this. But they will, because my ego is going to put this out on my site as well. But,
right.
And then the Short Time Wrestling Podcast is one where I actually have some crossover. There are actors, musicians, comedians, all these that have wrestling backgrounds that I've had on my show. So that's my little pitch.
Yeah, so you're doing a lot. So this is awesome. The Matt Talk Podcast Network, matttalkonline.com. Thank you for coming on the show, Jason.
Hey, my pleasure, man. I love this thing. Love geeking out.
I know. Yeah, we'll have to have you back when your studio is being built or close to being done. That'd be cool. So that's it. That's it for this episode. Check us out at podcastengineeringschool.com. Check out any courses coming up with the school, and you can always message me, and you can always comment on the posts. And I'm loving your notes, by the way. A lot of listeners are sending notes and hellos, so thank you for that. Until next week, sound great.
Gave up on me, well, some chance you gave